Wrestling podcasts are the new shoot interviews. It has almost become a rite of passage for any wrestler cast aside by WWE to jump on a pod like Talk is Jericho with two loaded guns and just let loose. Almost everybody does this, throwing blame at the company, at Vince, at Shane, at Stephanie, at Triple H, at anyone you can think of. But while this definitely makes for great listening, it isn't always the most responsible option. Today, we're going to talk about people who took the opposite approach. They accepted failure as a consequence of their own action and used it as an opportunity for self-reflection, growth, and ownership. So, let's get into it. I'm Andy for What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestlers who blamed themselves for failing in WWE. Number 10. Zack Ryder. When asked by SiriusXM's Busted Open Radio about being shunted down the card almost as quickly as he'd risen, Zack Ryder said that he should have spoken up for himself, calling himself so young and so naive for accepting that everything that happened to him was part of the plan. Remember, this guy had his kayfabe girlfriend poached from him by John Cena, while Kane rolled his goddamn wheelchair off the stage. It was a proper old school burial in every sense. The organic hype train that Ryder had built for himself was dead. In the man's own words, I wasn't mature enough to knock on the boss's door and say, hey, I'm one of the top merch shifters, I've been busting my ass, so why is this happening? So I blame nobody but myself for what went down. On top of this, Zack also downplayed the idea that he was being punished on air at this time, although he was ultimately relieved to score his release from the company in 2020, having suffered from anxiety during his last year on the road. Number 9. Cody Rhodes. Though Cody loves taking shots at WWE on television, he doesn't actually blame the company for the circumstances leading to his release in 2016. Rarely used for anything meaningful in his last few months in WWE, Cody asked for and was granted his release, and later hit the internet with the revelation that he'd been begging the writers for a change from the Stardust gimmick for 6 months, seeing numerous ideas shot down in the process. But in the end, he took responsibility for letting the character break him, as he explained to journalist Alex McCarthy on Twitter, calling himself a subpar performer under the paint. And when you look at where he is in 2020, I think it's safe to say that leaving WWE has done him the world of good. Number 8. Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle's release from WWE in 2006 wasn't pretty. Vince McMahon cut him for health reasons, but Angle later came out and said that he was working hurt and the WWE simply wouldn't give him the time off that he needed to heal. So, when he was let go from WWE, you'd think, well, maybe now that he's free, he's going to take that time off, he's going to heal up, he's going to come back healthy, he's going to come back fixed and ready to go. And then he signed for TNA just a month later. It wasn't until after re-signing for WWE in 2017 that Kurt's tune on his 2006 departure finally changed. There was a network special all about him. It was called Homecoming, and it saw him blame himself, not WWE, for his departure, saying that he developed a crippling addiction and drove himself out of the company, no longer pointing the finger at the brutal road schedule or lack of time off. Was this a new perspective born of maturity, or a little bootlicking move designed to make Vince happy? That all depends on how cynical you are, but at least Kurt still owned it. Number 7. Drew McIntyre. Finally, in 2020, Drew McIntyre has become the true chosen one that he was touted as upon debuting for WWE in 2009. He's flying high as the WWE champion, but he was nonetheless seen as a major bust by the time he left the company in 2014, having failed to catch on as anything close to a top guy. I mean, the last few months of his run were spent fanning around with 3MB. Now, 3MB were a lot of fun, but they were a jobber stable, so this was a major relegation. Now, however, Drew is the king. Speaking to British newspaper The Guardian after Mania 36, Drew said that when WWE let him go, he said to himself, "This is on you." He realised there and then that if he wanted to regain his dream, he was going to have to prove to everybody who he is and that he is what they thought they were back when he started. Now, here we are, 2020, WWE champion, top of the goddamn world, baby. Number 6. Jordan Myles. Controversy struck in October 2019 as NXT wrestler Jordan Myles put WWE on blast for a new t-shirt design that, in his own words, screamed racism against African Americans, calling it a slap in the face to every African American performer, fan and supporter. 1 month later, after much back and forth, and Myles was gone from the company. Now wrestling as ACH again, a recent interview with the Submission Squad saw Myles open up on what went down in WWE, in which he said said he wasn't going to take back any of his comments, but did acknowledge that he could have said things a bit more intelligently, and that's in his own words. Could have been a bit more calm, could have come from a real place. Not an angry place. Truth be told, it's all my fault, he said. I'll take the blame for this. I could have easily just put down the phone. I could have easily just deleted my Twitter. I know I let a lot of people down, and that's what hurts the most. I am truly sorry. So here's hoping that he's in a better place today than he was back then. However, he's right when he says that that goddamn horrible, awful, racist t-shirt should have never made it to the internet. Number 5. Mick Foley.
Mick Foley, a WWE failure? He's a legend, you bald idiot.
Well, absolutely, you're not wrong, I am a bald idiot, but not everything this guy has done in the company has been a roaring success. I mean, let's go back to the unveiling of the 24/7 title. This was back in May 2019. Mick was there. He had a little bag, and inside it was the green and gold strap. They'd linked it, WWE had, to the old hardcore title, because Mick was one of the most iconic holders. We knew this thing was coming along with 24/7 rules, so yeah, people were expecting a big unveiling. This thing, however, was a goddamn mess. Foley looked really lost out there. He looked really unsure of himself. He didn't believe what he was saying, and he got widespread criticism across the internet, and it all played out before a live crowd that actually booed the big reveal. But whose fault was it? Was it WWE's, or was it Mick? Well, Mick blames himself. He said on Twitter afterwards that, people had built this thing up as being something like the hardcore title, and I just didn't do my best job out there. He has since deleted his Twitter account, which makes it really hard to source this quote, but trust me, he held his hands up. The ensuing weeks and months saw the 24/7 championship become a fun distraction on the undercard, and it still is today. So, in the end, the big reveal didn't really matter all that much, but still, man, what a shoddy segment. Number 4. William Regal. William Regal almost certainly has a job for life in WWE. He's been with the promotion since rejoining from WCW in 2000. He's all over the place. He's NXT's general manager, he's director for talent development, he's the head of global recruiting. He's a very important guy, is what I'm trying to say. However, things weren't always quite so secure for him. He's always been a tremendous wrestler, but his vices and personal problems derailed many a push throughout his career, including his run in 1999 as the Real Man's Man. Remember that entrance theme? What a banger. That January saw Regal taken off television and sent to rehab before WWE let him go 3 months later. Now, Regal spoke about this when he was interviewed by TalkSport in 2015, and he put his hands up. He said that the failure was all on him and not Vince Russo, who came up with the daft gimmick, with management realising soon after his demotion that William was in no fit state to keep performing on TV. He ended up re-signed and back on WWE television 18 months later. Number 3. John Cena. Beyond an oft-celebrated debut that saw him accost Kurt Angle with ruthless aggression, immediately scoring the respect of guys like The Undertaker, John Cena's early WWE run was such a big flop that it brought him to the brink of release, with only an impromptu tour bus rap battle saving him from the chop. The story goes that the Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick, which saved his career, came about when Stephanie McMahon heard him rapping on the road and said, "Hey, let's try this on TV," and the rest is history. But before that, Cena's basic, tiresome, and kinda loathsome babyface act was really wearing thin. People had turned on him all over the place. He was failing, and he was almost on the unemployment line. And he has said several times since then that if the company had let him go, it would have been entirely fair. He put his hands up. But this isn't the only way that Cena has admitted his failings. Look at the Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania 36. I mean, he showed remarkable self-awareness in that. The whole thing was basically a deconstruction about everything he'd failed at in his career. It was absolutely tremendous, and it was another example of Big John taking big ownership of his big failures, big again. Number 2. Kane. One of the most successful transformations in pro wrestling history saw Glenn Jacobs go from Fake Diesel to Kane, becoming one of the most celebrated monsters in wrestling. But before Fake Diesel, Jacobs played the original Britt Baker, Isaac Yankem, DDS. He was a wrestle-crap-worthy evil dentist introduced alongside Jerry Lawler and tasked with swatting Bret Hart. Now, the gimmick didn't take off, because of course it didn't, and Jacobs was stripped of it after a year, having totally failed to get over. Fast forward to 2018 and Jerry Lawler's Dinner with the King podcast, and Kane took full ownership of the flop. He said that while WWE did everything they could to try and make the character work and invested a lot of faith in him as a performer, he just didn't put in the same level of effort, and that's why the gimmick bombed. While it's tough to argue with the man himself on this matter, it's hard to imagine the evil dentist Isaac Yankem ever getting over in that era of wrestling, so shoutouts to Britt Baker for making her version of it really work in 2020. What I'm saying is that Britt Baker is better than Kane. At me. Number 1. Roman Reigns. Professional wrestling is genuinely lucky to have a man like Roman Reigns in it. The big dog never comes across as anything other than a great guy behind the scenes, and knowing that very little of his on-screen failings have anything to do with him enhances this as well. It wasn't his fault that he was pushed way over his head as an ace-like Hulk Hogan figure against the fans' wishes. But he would never say that himself. He would never come out and blame the company because he's just a goddamn professional. Let's go to WrestleMania 33, the main event with The Undertaker. It was awkward, it was clunky, and it was met with brutal reactions online and in the building. Many pointed to The Undertaker's advancing years as the reason for this, and in fairness, this was kinda justified by Taker's performance. But not Roman, who took responsibility for the whole match in an interview with CBS Sports in April 2018. Here's what he had to say. It just felt so heavy and so much more emotional than I was ready for, so I think that was the hardest thing. Maybe I wasn't good enough, or maybe I could have been better. I always hold The Undertaker in such high regard that I feel I could have done better. It was a high effort performance from the big dog. Pretty cool, however, to hear that he's so humble about it. So that's our list, but what do you guys think? And can you think of any others? Let us know in the comments section below. After that, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe, you can do whatever the hell you want, man. And then you can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE and myself at Andy H. Murray, where you can tell me how wrong I am. Goodbye.